back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to another edition of DIY Money.
DIY Money.
Yeah.
I almost said another edition of DIY Money.
Okay.
Repeated too much.
Repeated too much, yeah. Give us a car update, because it's apropos to what we're talking about today.
Yeah. Okay, so I took my car. I got quoted for some engine thing. I don't know car words. They could have said anything, but I nod and smile like, oh, yeah, the blah, blah, blah component on the... Okay. I don't know, but I don't want them to know that, because then they're always like, and also this filter, and that filter, and this filter you've never heard of, and the windshield wiper fluid.
I'm going to share with you a lesson that I share with all of the kids that I teach in 485.
Okay.
And that is, we have a pandemic in our society where people pretend to understand when they don't.
Oh, I'm not afraid to admit it when I don't understand outside of that context.
And I use the automobile example as my example because I, too, do not know automobiles. And I will say to people, I don't know what that means. They will then inevitably repeat exactly what they said. You need a rotor, rooter, twisted Bob, Frank, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. Can you explain it again? You need a rotor, rooter, twisted, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, no, I'm sorry. I don't think you understand me. I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you explain it to me like I'm a 12-year-old? And the example that I give was a time that I took it to a particular shop. I have not been that shop in many, many years. It was a chain type place. And they told me I needed something massively elaborate. And again, I don't even know what it is. Something to the timing belt and the blah, 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 and the blah, blah, blah. And I had gone in for like an oil change. And so I ask again, I'm sorry, I don't know what you mean. Can you explain it again? He says it again. And I said, and I'd use these exact words, this is not my area. I mean, I've become very vulnerable. I'm like, this is not my area. And so you're going to have to explain it to me like I'm a 12-year-old. So try again. He proceeds to tell me how these things are connected. And he says that it is recommended that at a certain point in time that it should be replaced. And I said to him, so what you're saying is, if I understand you correctly, it's not a problem now, but you think I should be aware of this and maybe consider getting it changed right now. Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think I'll pass today, but I really appreciate that. Sidebar, I still drive that, my son drives that Volvo XC60. I have never had whatever it was changed, and this is 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah,
Ever.
That's fair. Well, the first thing they quoted me was in my Googling beforehand what I expected to be wrong, so I feel okay about that. But then he said, oh, and also, your transmission, it's not out yet, but it's on its way out. And I was like, I don't know about all that. So I tried to get him to explain to me what was wrong with it. So then I'm going to take it somewhere else and have them look at it. And if they say the same thing, maybe there's an issue. If not, I hate to say it, but I feel like they might just be taking advantage of me.
You need an auto ally.
I do.
You need an auto ally.
Do you know one?
Yes, I do. I have already given you his name.
Oh, that one. Okay,
yes.
I will go to him.
Okay. Wow,
yeah,
that's not what.
Well,
this is relevant to our subject matter today because you are experiencing an emergency.
I am.
And a lot of times, let's rehash a little bit. We are back on the horse of some of these, soapbox episodes, and if you're tuning in and you're like, okay, when are they going to get back to the questions? We will get back to the questions, and we'd love to have your questions. So that's still a thing. And by the way, thanks again to the influencer who keeps promoting us. And our numbers keep shooting up because that's amazing. We've been doing this podcast for like 5 years, and our numbers have never been higher. So whoever's doing that, thank you. Drop me a line. Let me know. Love to send you some swag, whatever. But for all our new listeners, we usually take questions. So send us an audio file question to podcast@DIYmoney.org. But one of the reasons we've gotten on this high horse, much more than just our back to basics that we do in the beginning of the year, is because before our very eyes, the economy is shifting quickly. And if it's not impacting you yet, it may impact you in the near future. And so we feel it's our duty, to get on here with this podium of these thousands of listeners, all of which we really appreciate, and really get after some of the basic principles that we subscribe to. We don't just give it lip service.
Right.
We subscribe to these principles so that when things happen, we are well prepared. Doesn't mean you're always prepared. Doesn't mean you're always not going to have issues, because you potentially can, and we're going to talk about that as well. But when you have an emergency arise, you've got a handle on it ahead of time.
Yeah. And it's ironic because the circumstance I am currently walking through is something I talked about months ago in a question. And I was like, well, if something happened to my car, here we are, then I can pull from my emergency fund. So that way, if the market is not at all-time highs and I don't feel great about selling out my investments, I'm not selling when the market is low. Well, as of when we cut this episode today, beginning of April, the market is lower than it was. I'm not going to take a stance on if it will come up or low or go lower or whatever, but I'm in a situation where I have my emergency fund. I will inevitably repair something on my car, TBD what I will repair, but I don't have to pull from my smaller investment account at this moment. Now, when there's an opportunity in the future and I see a better opportunity, yes, I will replenish my emergency fund quickly. Certainly any excess margin I've created in my budget for the next few months will be quickly trying to replenish the amount I've taken out of my emergency fund, because sometimes when you get hit once and you're down, they just keep coming.
They
and
do.
the 2x4s just keep swinging.
Well, I want to dovetail. So the last episode, Logan and I were on, and we were talking about creating margin, because you're never going to get ahead if you're not creating some kind of margin. Meaning, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, if you're just, going through every 2 weeks, you're getting paid, and that money maybe is already spent before it came in the door. And newsflash, I've seen this with people making hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is not a low-income problem. This is a personal, American problem. This is a problem of, needing something instantaneously and not having the patience or the humility to say no or to delay the gratification. But once you expand your margin, it's critical that you then take that expanded margin and you sock away at minimum, I would say, 3 months of your expenses for an emergency fund. And you know what? Maybe later on in life you have kids and maybe you expand that to 6 months. Maybe with no debt, you go back down to 3 months. I mean, it can be a fluid thing. But the idea, and this goes back to one we did just 3 episodes before, you're not getting a second job so you can go out more. You're not working overtime or doing the side hustle to pay for your DraftKings account or whatever. You're doing it for an intention. You're doing it for a purpose. And many people, sadly, they don't have an emergency fund. And so they're not putting it in there. They're not putting money aside. You touched on a point, and I want to really dive deep into this, because there are a lot of people, I think, listening to this podcast. I think we have 2 types of audience members. We have people who are living paycheck to paycheck, and they're going, I don't know how to get ahead. And we're talking to you about the steps. But I also think we have a large group of audience members that have resources, they have ample funds, but they genuinely don't have money or capital sitting in a safe location that they can pull from at any moment. So talk about that a little bit, because you talked about the markets and so forth, and I'm usually the market guy. So, I mean, it's easy for me to talk markets. I want to hear again from your words regarding why you kept that sidelined and not invested and yada, yada.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, it's because we don't know what the market will do. So we say a lot of times on the show, 5 years or less, you don't invest, because historically over a 5-year period, you're in good shape to have a lot of wiggle room. If the market declines for several months or for a year or two, it should, in theory, historically, come back to where it was. But keeping it outside of that means that you're not making emotional decisions. So for me, I keep my fast cash, kind of $1,000 in cash, small bills. You can call me apocalyptic or whatever, but if something were to happen, I have some money set aside for that kind of thing. Then I have a high yield savings account, and I use Discover Bank. I like using them. I have a Discover credit card. They are not a sponsor of this show, but I do think, yeah, there you go. I do think they have a pretty easy online investment account, and right now, I think my account is doing about 3.5% of interest. So I'm making a little bit of interest just for parking it there. So that's where I keep my emergency fund, because what people may not realize is if you have your emergency fund in your bank account, even if it's in savings, 9 times out of 10, if we ask clients, well, where do you have your emergency fund? They're like, it's in savings. What do you mean? Oh, well, how much interest are you making on that? 0. Every single time it's like, oh, I got $3.86 last year. Great. Fantastic. Go open a high yield savings account, and this, I know you'll get on your soapbox and get mad about this because they did it to you, call your bank, because sometimes all you have to do is request it, and I'll let you tell that story from your experience.
Well, I had a Capital One account, and I've had it for years because Capital One traditionally is paying a higher rate than normal. So when rates were negative purple, I put money there, and I got negative purple +1, and it was great, and I felt great. And so as rates crept higher, I thankfully didn't have an emergency, and I didn't need to log into that. And then as rates were going up, my assumption was I was getting that rate on my emergency fund. And one day, for whatever reason, I logged in and I was floored. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to do basic math on a 4% yield, what I should have earned over a 6-month time period. 2%, right? This is simple. Well, it wasn't up 2%. And I'm like, what the heck? And so I dove in, and I was getting still the negative purple +1. I was not getting market rates. I was livid. Probably a little more livid than I should be. I didn't show my New Yorker on the phone. I just called and
I don't
casually.
believe that.
No, I didn't, because it's not the person's fault who answered the phone. But I said, I'm just curious. All over your website, you are promoting this particular rate, yet I have been a client of yours for 10 years. Why do I not have that rate? Oh, that's in our new blah, blah, blah account. I'm sorry. How do I get the blah, blah, blah account? Oh, you just have to tell me you want the blah, blah, blah account. I want the blah, blah, blah account.
I love when you tell that story.
And and immediately I started getting nice interest.
Yeah.
It was,
now there are a few banks around town here in Lexington that have started. They have banners outside on the street showing 4%, 3.8%. Blah, blah, blah. I guarantee you there are so many people, even at those banks, that aren't checking, that are not, they didn't request it. I'm requesting it.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
That was my Quint impression.
So I had a situation recently where I needed the emergency fund. I needed to tap into the emergency fund, and so I did. And I, I've been on a personal finance journey for 20 plus years. I followed, all the steps. That's how the steps were sort of created that we do, is trial and error by yours truly. And so I'm in the wealth creation phase, but I have never gotten away from some of the basics. I track the expenses. I do not let margin carry over. Margin on a monthly basis is always dispersed. It's dispersed somewhere. It could be dispersed to a savings account because we have a new goal that we're trying to achieve, a trip or something like that. It could be dispersed more to the kids' accounts for custodial reasons, but it's always dispersed. In fact, oftentimes we will get near the end of the month and I will tell my wife, hey, babe, there's $200 left in the checking account. Like, don't spend too much at the grocery store. And you would think, if you were overhearing that conversation, you would think, what is he losing it? Like, he's only I keep very little in the checking account. I always am sweeping it other places because I track our expenses. I know where the money is going. Doesn't always mean that if we wanted to go out to eat on the last, day of the month and I'm out of the entertainment budget, but I have a little bit left in the grocery budget, I'm going to use it, right? I mean, I'm very fluid with that. Okay, but I needed $1,600.93 for an emergency that happened at our house. It was very annoying. So I wrote a $1,693 check. I immediately swept that money over from the emergency fund, same day, so it wouldn't bounce, because it would have bounced, candidly. And so I moved it over. But now I'm $1,693 short in my emergency fund. Now, the very next time that the month or whatever, I am going to peel off, and any monies that was going to savings or goals takes it takes a back seat. And that emergency fund is now replenished. And then we go back. And we're not in this situation now, which is nice, but if it were to have meant that a goal was pushed off, so be it. It's okay. There's going to be another opportunity. There's going to be another trip. There's going to be another thing. It's not the end of the world when we can't do it right now. And sometimes I'm the bad guy with that, of course, right? Sometimes I'm the bad guy. That's okay. But most often than not, by being disciplined and prudent, it ends up benefiting all in our house rather than those minor times where I'm the bad guy.
Right. Yeah. Here's the last thing I'll say about an emergency fund, because we see it with clients all the time. If you are starting out on this journey and you started at step 1 and you got that $1,000 fast cash and now you are attacking debt, get ready.
Oh,
because an emergency will happen. 80% of the time we meet with clients, if they have a lot of debt and we come up with this elaborate plan, you're going to pay it off in 16 months and here's how. They will call us within a month and they need a new battery in their car or they need tires. It will happen. Do not let that discourage you from continuing down this journey, because once you get that emergency fund in place, you're ready and you can start to chunk away at these goals. There will be times, to your point, Quint, you have to say, okay, time out on the goals, time out on the vacation, time out on the new car I'm scouting out. We got to build the emergency fund back up, because you do not want to get to a point where you have that emergency and you've gone on vacation last month and now you're taking out credit card debt to pay for that emergency.
I don't want to get on a Christian high horse here or a religious high horse here, but I do believe that like money is the number one thing, in my belief, that Satan uses to basically destroy someone and or their family, because it is easy to do. And you're right. When you begin to get disciplined, you will be attacked. It will happen. So be prepared for that. No question. Yeah. All right, great. We'll wrap it up there. Emergency fund. Very, very critical step. Remember, friends, the secret to wealth is pretty simple. Live on less than you make. Invest the rest. Do so for a very long time. Make it a great one.